Most people believe the government can't just take your property. They're wrong. Under existing executive orders and federal statute, nearly everything you own can be legally requisitioned the moment a national emergency is declared. Your food, your fuel, your vehicle, your labour. Not hypothetically, not after some new law gets passed, right now, today. 7 categories of private property the federal government has already pre-authorized itself to seize, the specific legal mechanisms that make each one enforceable, and what, if anything, falls outside their reach. The people who already know about Executive Order 13,603 are ahead of the curve. Everyone else is about to have a very uncomfortable 10 minutes. This isn't conspiracy theory, this is statutory text. The legal foundation for federal seizure of private resources sits in the Defense Production Act of 1950. That law was signed during the Korean War. It never expired. It's been renewed, amended, and expanded by every administration since. It gives the president sweeping authority to direct private industry, allocate materials, and requisition resources in the interest of national defense. Executive Order 13,603, signed in 2012, didn't create new powers, it reorganized existing ones. It assigned specific cabinet departments to specific resource categories. Department of Agriculture gets food, Department of Energy gets fuel, Department of Transportation gets vehicles, Department of Defense gets water, Department of Health and Human Services gets medical resources and personnel. And it did something most people never noticed. It extended these authorities to peacetime, not just wartime. Read Section 201. It's right there. Here's how the mechanism actually works. The president declares a national emergency. That's it. There's no congressional vote required, no judicial review, no public referendum, one signature. The National Emergencies Act of 1976 requires the president to specify the powers being activated, but the threshold for declaration is entirely discretionary. Once that signature hits paper, the chain of authority cascades immediately. The president delegates to cabinet secretaries. Cabinet secretaries delegate to agency heads. Agency heads issue allocation orders. Allocation orders become enforceable demands on private citizens and businesses. The whole process can activate in hours. You imagine soldiers kicking in doors. It doesn't look like that. It looks like a letter, a phone call from a regional administrator, a supply chain rerouting order that pulls inventory from your local distributor before it ever reaches the shelf. It looks like bureaucracy, and bureaucracy is far more efficient at confiscation than any armed raid. Here's the part that should stop you cold. There are currently over 40 active national emergency declarations in effect right now, not during some future crisis. Right now. Some date back decades. The legal architecture is already switched on. The powers are already available. The only thing between current law and active enforcement is a decision to use them. If you think this is unprecedented, it's not. Executive Order 6102, signed in 1933, made it illegal for private citizens to own more than 5 ounces of gold. Violation carried a fine of $10,000 and up to 10 years in prison. Citizens were ordered to turn in their gold to Federal Reserve banks at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce. The government then revalued gold to $35 per ounce. Legal seizure, legal profit. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, law enforcement went door to door in New Orleans confiscating legally owned firearms from private citizens. No warrant, no due process. It took a federal lawsuit, NRA versus Noggin, to get an injunction stopping the confiscations, and years of litigation to get some of those weapons returned. During World War II, over 120,000 Japanese Americans had their property seized, their businesses liquidated, and their bank accounts frozen. All legal under existing emergency authority. The precedent isn't theoretical. It's documented, exposed, and exposed again, and most people still don't know about it. Let's talk about what they can actually take. Category 1. Food and agricultural resources. Under Executive Order 13,603, Section 201A, 1. The Department of Agriculture has authority over all commodities and products capable of being ingested by human beings or animals. All food resources, all food resource facilities, livestock, veterinary resources, feed, seeds, equipment used to produce, process, store, or distribute food. That language covers everything from the grain silo on a commercial farm to the canned goods in your basement. This isn't new authority. During World War II, the War Food Administration controlled the production and distribution of virtually all food in the country. Rationing wasn't optional. It was enforced. Sugar, coffee, meat, butter, canned goods, all regulated. Violation meant fines or imprisonment. The infrastructure for that level of control has been modernized, not dismantled. The common failure is visibility. You buy £200 of rice from a bulk supplier. That transaction is logged. You use a credit card at a warehouse store and purchase 15 cases of freeze-dried meals. That purchase history exists in a database. You post your stockpile on social media. You tell your neighbours. You store everything in one location, in your garage, where it can be inventoried in a single visit. You've built a target, not a resource. The informed response is distribution. Smaller quantities stored across multiple locations. Barter-grade packaging that doesn't scream long-term food storage. Caloric diversification across shelf-stable categories so no single seizure eliminates your supply. Cash purchases from multiple vendors. No loyalty cards, no digital trails. Think about it this way. A distributed, low-visibility food strategy survives the first sweep. A centralized, visible one gets catalogued in the first 72 hours. Here's the twist most preppers miss. Your grocery store loyalty card already constitutes a purchasing profile. Every bulk buy, every unusual quantity, every pattern deviation is data. You don't need a knock on your door, you just need an algorithm and an allocation order. The seizure doesn't start with confiscation, it starts with identification. Category 2. Energy and fuel. The Department of Energy holds authority over all forms of energy including petroleum, natural gas, electrical power, and the infrastructure that produces, stores or distributes them. Your diesel stockpile, your propane tanks, your solar panel array, your generator, all of it falls within the legal definition. The 1970s fuel crisis demonstrated exactly how fast this authority activates. Odd-even rationing by license plate number, gas station allocation limits, criminal penalties for hoarding. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve exists precisely because the government understood it needed centralized control over fuel distribution during emergencies. That logic doesn't stop at federal reserves. It extends to every private fuel source within reach of an allocation order. The common failure is single source dependence. One generator, one fuel type. 100 gallons of gasoline stored in a shed that's visible from the road. That runs a generator loud enough for neighbours to hear from 200 feet away. When the power grid goes down and you're the only house on the block with lights on, you've just announced yourself to everyone within line of sight. The informed response is multi-source energy planning. Solar that's not grid-tied and not registered through a utility interconnection agreement. A wood gasification setup that converts biomass to combustible gas. Manual alternatives for every critical function. Hand pumps for water. Hand tools for construction. Human-powered transportation for local movement. Redundancy across fuel types means no single confiscation order eliminates your energy capability. A $20 crosscut saw doesn't require fuel. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't show up in any database. The twist. Just registered solar panel installations are public record in most jurisdictions. Permit applications for generators create paper trails. Every grid-tied solar system is visible to the utility company, and by extension to any agency that issues an allocation order for energy resources. You installed solar to be independent. The permit you filed to do it made you a target. Category 3. Transportation and vehicles. The Department of Transportation holds authority over all forms of civil transportation, every vehicle, vessel and aircraft, roads, ports, railroads, and inland waterways, your truck, your car, your boat, your motorcycle. If it moves and it's registered, it's within reach. During World War II, civilian vehicles were routinely commandeered for military logistics. Maritime vessels were seized under emergency authority. The legal framework hasn't changed, it's been refined. Modern vehicle registration databases make identification instantaneous. Your truck's VIN, its registered address, its fuel type, its cargo capacity, all available data. The common failure is a bug-out plan that depends entirely on a single registered vehicle. You've mapped your route, you've packed your vehicle, you've calculated fuel range to the mile. But that vehicle is registered to your name, at your address, with its specifications in a state database accessible to any agency operating under emergency authority. Your evacuation plan is someone else's requisition list. The informed response is alternative mobility planning. Pre-positioned caches along multiple routes that aren't vehicle-dependent. Bicycle routes that avoid major roadways. Foot travel capability with appropriate gear for 20-mile days. Relationships with people in destination areas who can provide transport from a staging point. The goal isn't to outrun a confiscation order in a vehicle they already know you own. It's to have movement capability that doesn't depend on anything registered, fueled by anything rationed, or travelling on any road they control. Here's the moral dilemma. Your vehicle might be your family's only evacuation option, and the government knows exactly where it's parked. A compliance order arrives, your kids are in the back seat, your supplies are loaded, the law says hand over the keys. What do? There's no clean answer, but there's a prepared answer, and that answer starts months before the order arrives, with a plan that doesn't put your family's survival in a single registered asset. Category 4. Water resources. The Department of Defense holds authority over all usable water from all sources: rivers, lakes, reservoirs, groundwater, and the treatment infrastructure that makes any of it drinkable. Water is the only resource category where federal authority intersects with an existing web of state-level restrictions that most people don't even know about. The common failure is total reliance on municipal supply. You turn on the tap, water comes out. You've never thought about where it comes from, how it's treated, or what happens when the system that delivers it is redirected to priority use. A single allocation order can reroute municipal water to military, industrial, or government priority facilities. Your tap doesn't go dry because the water ran out. It goes dry because you're no longer on the priority list. The informed response is independent water capability. Gravity-fed collection systems that don't require power. Purification equipment rated to handle biological and chemical contaminants. Knowledge of local water tables and natural springs within walking distance of your location. Hidden cistern capacity that isn't visible from the surface. A household Berkey-style gravity filter processes roughly 3,500 gallons before the filters need replacement. That's approximately 2 years of drinking water for a family of 4 at 1 gallon per person per day. The twist that reframes everything. Many states already restrict personal rainwater collection. Some require permits. Some cap the volume you're allowed to store. The legal framework for controlling your access to water isn't an emergency power. It's already normalized. You're already living inside a system that regulates whether you can collect rain that falls on your own roof. The emergency declaration doesn't create water control, it expands control that already exists. This is the point in the video where most people check out, not because the information isn't important, because the scale feels overwhelming. 7 categories of seizure authority, decades of legal precedent, purchase records and registration databases that already exist. If you're still here, you're the type who converts information into action instead of paralysis. That's exactly what this channel is built for. Not entertainment, not fear content, decision-making advantage. Subscribe if you want to keep receiving pattern-level intelligence that most channels don't have the research depth to produce. Category 5. Health resources and personnel. The Department of Health and Human Services holds authority over all drugs, biological products, medical devices, materials, facilities, and critically health resources, which the order defines to include personnel. Read that again. Personnel, not just your medication, not just your local hospital's equipment. The doctors, nurses, EMTs, and pharmacists in your community. Historical precedent exists. Medical draft proposals have surfaced during multiple national emergencies. During pandemic response planning, compulsory service frameworks were developed for healthcare workers. The selective service system doesn't just register potential soldiers. Its infrastructure can be expanded to register and conscript skilled civilians. The common failure is total pharmaceutical dependence with no backup capability. You take a daily medication. You have a 30-day supply. The supply chain disruption or allocation order redirects pharmaceutical production to military and government priority facilities. Day 31 arrives. You have no alternative, no knowledge of equivalent compounds, no relationship with anyone who has medical training, no ability to manage your own health outside the system that just locked you out. The informed response is layered medical autonomy. Extended medication reserves built gradually through legitimate prescription management, knowledge of herbal and traditional alternatives that address your specific conditions, basic trauma medical training. Not just first aid, but hemorrhage control, wound closure, infection management. The ability to keep yourself and your family alive when the professional medical infrastructure is requisitioned for government priorities. A $200 tactical medical kit and 40 hours of training doesn't replace a hospital, but it replaces a hospital that's no longer available to you. The psychological element here is the deepest in this entire list. Your neighbour is an ER nurse. She's treated your kid's broken arm. She's the person you'd call in any medical emergency. Under conscription authority, she can be legally ordered to report to a government-designated facility, taken from your community, reassigned to wherever the allocation order sends her. The person you trusted with your family's health becomes a government resource. That's not hypothetical. That's what health resources, including personnel, means when you read the actual text. Category 6. Communications and technology. Federal authority over all forms of communication infrastructure doesn't require a specific executive order because it's built into the foundational structure of communications regulation. The FCC's Emergency Broadcast Authority allows the government to commandeer any broadcasting facility. The President has authority to shut down or seize control of any communications infrastructure during a declared emergency. Internet, cellular, radio spectrum, satellite, all of it. The common failure is catastrophic. Your entire coordination strategy depends on cell networks. Your family communication plan assumes working phones. Your information gathering depends on internet access. Your community network exists in a group chat. 3 carriers handle the vast majority of all cellular traffic. The government doesn't need to seize your phone. They just need to shut down 3 companies. 1 executive order, 3 phone calls, 280 million people lose their primary communication method simultaneously. The informed response starts with accepting that digital communications are the most fragile and most controllable information layer. Ham radio licensing gives you access to frequencies that are decentralized and difficult to suppress entirely. A technician-class ham license requires passing a 35-question exam. The equipment can be purchased for under $150. Mesh networking devices allow local communication without any infrastructure. Pre-established communication plans with your people, rally points, signal schedules, dead drop locations, all determined before the network goes dark. The goal isn't to defeat a communication shutdown. It's to have already built a system that doesn't depend on the infrastructure being shut down. The twist. Wartime censorship has been implemented before. During both world wars, the government controlled what information could be transmitted, published, and broadcast. Internet kill switch discussions have occurred at the highest levels of government. The technical capability exists. The legal authority exists. The only question is the political will to use it. And in a severe enough emergency, political will becomes a formality. Category 7. Labour and human capital. This is the one most people never see coming. The Selective Service System currently has approximately 16 million names registered. That infrastructure doesn't just exist for military conscription. Under emergency powers, compulsory civilian labour allocation is legally available. The War Manpower Commission during World War II directed where civilians could and couldn't work. Essential workers were frozen in their jobs. Others were redirected to priority industries. The legal precedent is clear, and the administrative infrastructure has never been dismantled. The common failure is the assumption that conscription only means military service. It doesn't. Skilled labour conscription targets electricians, mechanics, engineers, medical professionals, communications technicians, agricultural workers, anyone whose skill set serves the government's priority allocation list. You spent 20 years building expertise that makes you valuable. In a normal economy, that's an asset. Under emergency labour authority, that expertise makes you a conscription target. The informed response operates on 2 levels. First, skill redundancy within your group. If one person gets conscripted, someone else can perform that function. No single point of failure in your community's capability. Second, essential personnel positioning. Understanding which roles are more likely to be targeted and building your group structure so that critical people have roles that offer exemption potential or reduced visibility. Age thresholds, dependency status, medical conditions. Know the categories. Know where your people fall. Here's the moral dilemma that sits at the centre of this category. If your skills make you valuable to the government's priority list, your expertise becomes a liability to your family's independence. The better you are at your job, the more likely you are to be taken from the people who depend on you. Do you advertise your capabilities to your community and risk appearing on a conscription registry? Or do you conceal your skills and reduce your value to the people around you? A mechanic who fixes every car in the neighbourhood is a community hero in peacetime and a labour conscription target in an emergency. That calculus doesn't have a comfortable solution. The psychological weight of this category is unlike anything else on this list. The other 6 categories take your things. This one takes you, your time, your labour, your autonomy, your physical presence with your family. The identity crisis of being told your body and your skills belong to the state isn't a theoretical exercise. It's happened before. It happened to 16 million people during World War II. The infrastructure to do it again is active, maintained, and funded. And there's a third moral dilemma that cuts across every category we've covered. A neighbour reports your food stockpile to authorities during rationing. The seizure is legal. The betrayal is personal. The law rewards informants with priority allocation. Community trust becomes a survival variable that no amount of stockpiling can solve. The most fortified basement in the country is worthless if the person next door knows what's in it. Most people believe the government can't just take their property. Now you've seen 7 categories of seizure authority. The specific executive orders and statutes that authorize each one. The historical precedents proving these powers have been used before, against citizens on domestic soil, with legal cover. The question was never whether the government could do this. The question is whether you've structured your life so that when they do, you're not standing in the open. Ownership in a modern state is a lease agreement with fine print most people never read. Preparation isn't about defeating the system. It's about understanding the terms of the agreement you never signed but are bound by. 3 principles. Invisibility. Nothing you own should advertise its existence to any database, any neighbour, or any agency with an allocation order. Distribution. No single location, no single asset, no single person holds enough value to justify a targeted seizure. Redundancy. Every critical capability has a backup that operates on a completely different system than the primary. Those 3 principles aren't just tactical. They're a philosophy of independence within a system designed to make independence optional. Of these 7 categories, which one are you most exposed to right now? And what's your first move to fix it? Drop it below. Now you know what's on the books. What you do with that is on you.